Good morning and welcome to the Big Buzz Breakfast Club. We are excited to talk about sponsorship growth for your nonprofit today in a part 2 of our series on sponsorship. As those of you who were with us for part 1 know, I started my sponsorship career when I was 11. I was thinking about that time and how I really just did what needed to be done. I didn't think about sponsorship, and I wasn't tainted by the idea of sales. I was 11 years old, working on a carnival in my backyard to raise money for muscular dystrophy, and I simply realized we needed prizes. So I went door to door in my community and went to our bigger businesses and solicited candy and all kinds of games and prizes that we could utilize for this carnival. Fast forward to 1999 when I became an executive director in Chicago, and I was tasked with finding sponsorship for a new event in the neighborhood. I had my sponsorship packages and I was ready to start soliciting, but I had no idea where to sell. These days, the development teams at nonprofit organizations are absolutely in high demand. Your job to secure revenue to keep your organizations running is so very important. And oftentimes, the growth of your organization rides on your shoulders. My goal today is to help you benefit from my 25 plus years of sponsorship to be able to continue to build your pipeline and find all the prospects you need to keep growing your nonprofit organizations during these difficult times. I hope that you too will be able to utilize some of the lessons we talk about today to secure sponsors like many of these on this page that we have worked with over the years. I've definitely come a long way from that little carnival in my backyard, but excited to share with you today the lessons that I've learned. I'm Melissa Legowski, founder of Big Buzz Idea Group, and excited to try to share this knowledge with you in the hopes that whether you can take away a piece of it or whether or not it's all gold to you because you haven't had anybody coach you on sponsorship, I hope that this information will benefit the nonprofit you serve and allow you to sustain these turbulent times. We're going to start today by talking about 10 tips for lead generation. In 1999, when I was tasked with launching RibFest Chicago, I absolutely had the packages and I knew what we wanted to offer. I knew we needed the money to make the event happen, but I had no idea how to grow my prospect list or where to start. I've learned a lot over time, and today we're going to share 10 tips of how you can find leads to keep your prospect line full. I hope that some of them, none of them are actually like, I think, real magic bullets, if you will, but I think everybody hopefully learned something that you did not think about previously to help you fill that pipeline. It's important when we're dealing with sponsorship to think about how organizations align with your values. I often, when I started, made the mistake of, going to organizations that were not really related to what I was presenting. So if you are doing a food festival, then you may want to think about what kinds of organizations work in the food industry. If you're a pantry, you may want to think about companies like Cisco or US Alliance that have a lot of food service, Aramark, food service throughout the region, and they could utilize any of their leftovers to also help support, feeding the hungry. I think that that's a natural alignment and a really good example of how two brands could align pretty easily. The arts are another thing. There are those companies who absolutely support the arts, and especially within music, being able to tie that together. If you think about, I know music is at the bottom of our list, but if you think about Lollapalooza and some of the brands that absolutely back music, and you have a music event, then those are organizations that might be good for you. If you're a highly sustainable nonprofit, then thinking about which companies have sustainability initiatives start to, again, create an alignment that make you a good fit. So it's important that you're doing your research on the front end to think about those companies that align with you, because you want to be able to have something in common with them. Bud Light is a great example. They sponsor Lollapalooza, they sponsor a lot of music events. So when we have music events, they were a natural for us to reach out to, and we've built a long time relationship with them. Just because they became a partner for some of our clients didn't mean that they were right for all of our clients, but absolutely looking at where that alignment worked was very important. Same kind of thing, if you're working with children, you may want to go after children brands. I know that we have, been able to talk to Kraft in the past, Heinz, and a lot of companies that, again, they align with children, and so they were a natural fit. If your organization is built on community, doing your research to find those companies that also foster community, again, very important. State Farm had a great campaign about the neighborhood of good that tied into some of our community organizations, because it was all, it all dovetailed very seamlessly together. And again, health. It's not uncommon to think about sponsors if you have, sometimes like dentists will sponsor, some kind of a sweet activity to counterbalance and remind people about the importance of brushing and good dental hygiene in connection with the project. Or if you think about an athletic footwear company that might also be sponsoring a run or a walk. Those are some really good alignments that just come very naturally. You want to think about companies that are in your community. I think you want to always start close to home and really take the time to think about, almost in some concentric circles, think about the ones closest to your organization, and then maybe draw your circle a little bit further out to the larger communities. I know we recently worked with one nonprofit who, they had only thought about targeting the businesses that were in their immediate city, but they actually served 8 suburban cities that were all connected in a geographical area, and therefore there was no reason for them not to reach out to businesses in all of those 8 communities for sponsorship. And by expanding their reach, they were able to double their sponsorship efforts for this year, and hopefully they will continue to increase it in the future when they get outside of COVID as well. Think about who the connectors are in your circle, whether they be in your organization, in your network, in other networking groups that you're part of, but you've got to know those people who are just good connectors. They seem to know everybody. They've got a referral for every need you ever have, and those are some great people as well for you to be able to lean on and to let them know you're looking for companies that might be a good fit for a corporate initiative. They generally know people, and they can help you shortcut your introductions by making those introductions for you and helping you expand your network. So I always look for the connectors. When I was early on, I thought I had to do it all myself, and I did not spend enough time thinking about the value of those people who are always out networking and always just seem to know everybody. But they are great resources to sit down, have a coffee with, and ask them who you might want to talk to and what ideas they have to share with you. I think talking to professional salespeople is another great tip. Again, there are certain industries where those people, their job in their livelihood is constantly being out in the community and constantly making new friends and constantly talking to people. And some of those industries include bankers, insurance agents, realtors, and mortgage brokers are some that just are at the top of my list. When I was networking, they were always at every single event that I went to. And you're a busy professional, you're busy trying to do all of your daily work, do all your meetings, and then also get to networking events to meet new people. But these people are constantly, out there moving and shaking and talking to folks. And so again, sitting down with all of these people, they are connectors of sorts, so it's a little bit of a sub layer to that prior slide. But, really sitting down with these people and making time to ask them who they know that might be a good fit for your organization is another way to help get some new introductions and some new leads. I learned pretty early on with a lot of the big companies, everybody's going for those. And the advantage of having somebody who can make an introduction for you or get you connected into an organization is really going to help you just have a faster sales cycle and a faster relationship development. And so, I think being a successful development team and being successful in sponsorship, it's going to take both. I think you're going to have to do some of the long-term leads and some of the direct introductions to try to have shorter sales cycles and be able to track your leads at both ends, but these are some people who can make introductions for you and help you get in the door a lot faster. You want to solicit your vendors. A lot of nonprofits don't take the time to think about where they're spending their money over the course of the year, and depending on the size of your organization, I think, there could be a lot of different opportunities for you, but I always encourage that you take your account payables, look at who you're issuing checks to in the course of a year, and look at what size your spend is with each of these vendors, and start with the ones where you're spending the most, and definitely invite them to support you back on your largest fundraiser of the year. Your suppliers may not want to support everything that you do, but definitely on that single most important fundraiser, it's definitely worth making an ask. I know that we worked one time, we've worked with a couple of nonprofits, one being a small hospital, and going through all of their payables gave us a laundry list of about 20 companies that really became very good partners for their project. So often you want to think about if you've got a lawyer, if you're working with an accounting firm, a landlord might support you back. Printers often are, something that nonprofits are making a spend with on a regular basis. Utility companies have programs where they're giving back and might be a good option for you to reach out to. Drug companies, sometimes there's a lot of money, we all know, in pharma, and if you are the right project and the right fit, you may have a lot of money that you're investing in pharmaceutical companies, and asking them to sponsor you back one time a year, absolutely a good idea. Restaurants, while they've been hit hard this year, are also another option that often nonprofits may have spends with restaurants throughout the course of the year. Maybe it's an ongoing retreat, where you are purchasing meals. Maybe it's board meetings that you're always ordering meals from a neighborhood restaurant, but asking those restaurants to then support you when they're in better times is also a good option. Every one of the projects that I lead, we also always ask our board or the committee for referrals, and I encourage you to do the same. Many of you probably have a give or get. That would have been another good poll question for the beginning of today, I know a lot of organizations are doing that these days, but checking in with your board, we ask our board for our clients to all provide us with 3 leads. And I went ahead and put a sample of what that looks like for you today, because I want you to be able to replicate this and utilize this system. You will see at the bottom that we highlight, use my name when contacting me, or when contacting this person. I'm willing to call ahead. Please don't mention my name. So we know very, very much that our board generally knows people, or the committees that are helping with our projects. They have a lot of contacts. The key is that they may not always want to be the one to make the introduction, or they may not want a certain contact to know that they were the one to make the referral. Sometimes it can be sensitive relationships. Sometimes maybe it could interfere with their own personal sales relationship with somebody. So I try to be really sensitive when I ask for referrals, but I absolutely, at the start of every project that we do, I share these sheets, and don't be afraid to share them regularly. We often put a deadline and let people know that we want all of their sponsor leads back, to help people also not feel like this can go on into, into the ether, but rather that there is a hard deadline when we want to start selling, and we want all your leads in by X date so that we can be effective. And then this helps you be able to follow up with them if they're willing to make introductions for you, so that you can get the contacts you need to, again, try to shortcut your sales cycle. If you have a robust development department or system already in place at your organization, I think that also talking to your donors about who they know for corporate referrals on sponsorship can be another great idea. These people are already champions and advocates for your organization, and so they often know people. They may, I think keeping them informed about the fact that you are launching a new corporate program, or that you have these corporate sponsorship needs that you are trying to fulfill for the organization, and you'd love to just brainstorm with them, is a great way to, again, keep them informed of what you're doing, and then start to see if they have other people in their network that they can introduce you to. So they, to help them think about who they know. And I think that sometimes when you're talking to your board or your committee, you want to also remind them who they know, and, suggest neighbors, suggest professional networks, suggest their family and their friends. They may have a lot of colleagues over their years in business, and all of them make potential sponsor leads for your organization. So tapping into that can be very valuable. When you start to look at other large organizations, this is something that I have done a few different times, right? We live in a very big country. And so the beauty of being here in Chicago and knowing that we may have an event that maybe it has to do with, let's say, music and children. And so we can take the initiative, and we could maybe go to LA, or we could go to New York, and we could try to see if they have similar events or similar activities that might be taking place in those cities or states. And then we can look at who's sponsoring those companies and those events. When you do that, then it starts to help you start to identify those larger tiered companies that you may also want to be able to reach out to. I think sometimes they are still directly connected to personal ties, and so sometimes you may not be able to penetrate, into those large corporations, or sometimes it may take a few years. I'll talk about an example that took me a few years to get secured. But being able to think about that is good. And I know that is one way that we found Gnarly Head is a wine company that supports a lot of barbecue events. They had a tour that they were doing across the country where they were going to events like Memphis in May that's barbecue oriented because their wine pairs well with barbecue. And through doing that, we were able to then realize that they would be a potential good fit for RibFest Chicago. We reached out to them through an agency originally, and then directly through the vineyard, and we've had a long-standing relationship that we've been able to manage then for several years after that initial outreach. So, when you find that good brand alignment, again, that's a good way to tie in, and looking at similar organizations can help you identify some candidates. We've also done that, sometimes even continuing to brainstorm through, on like the barbecue front, other brands that tie to barbecue, was another brainstorming activity around barbecue grills. And so we went to a lot of the different makers, Weber and Charcoal King for the briquettes and the lighter fluid and all of those types of things. So you're always trying to get your creative juices flowing, and being able to look at similar events across the country can be a really good way to get that that going. There's some really good food events that happen also in different parts of the country. Some of the music events, you know, Coachella, and you can look at the different size music festivals. Sometimes there's the Sasquatch Music Festival and other ones that start to be a little bit smaller. So you can find one that compares in size to what you're working on and then try to find those leads. Again, I think tapping into your existing network is also a great idea. Being able to look at the volunteers that you work with is another great opportunity. So you may have some real champions already working for your organization, and tapping into them and letting them know what you're doing and asking who they know that might be a good candidate is a really good way to just, again, make sure that you're leaving no stone unturned. Perhaps your volunteer pool is not very large and maybe that's not a good option for you, but I always encourage that you just are tapping every potential source to continue growing that list of leads that you have so that you can think about who you can be reaching out to. And you constantly want to be working to fill that pipeline while you're conducting the outreach. I know that, you know, sometimes it can feel like feast or famine, and so you may only be doing all of your list building. That may be more comfortable. You may be able to be behind the scenes, and maybe you're uncomfortable kind of making the ask. And so you just keep building that list. But if you're not balancing it with actually doing the outreach and making the ask, you're not going to secure the dollars that you need, and you're not going to be successful. So I challenge you to make sure you're pushing yourself forward and that you're really trying to put yourself out there to keep knocking on doors and making the phone calls. And I think you want to always make sure you're tracking what that outreach looks like. Sometimes I think time goes so fast, and when you're prospecting and building those relationships, it's amazing to me that it can be 2 or 3 weeks in between calls, and time can just fly by. And so by making sure you're documenting when you're doing that outreach, it also helps hold you accountable for when it's time to make another call and continue reaching out. Mobile marketing companies are something that I did not know about when I first started sponsorship, but they have turned out to be a really good resource for a lot of our larger summer events when we were having them. And so these companies, marketing agencies, are often looking for places where their brands that they rep and the clients they work with can align with a particular organization. We've been able to have some great success. This particular Sony PlayStation is one of the projects that when I started on RibFest, constantly reached out to them. I really, you know, men and barbecue, it just made a lot of sense to me that this would be an ideal fit for a company like PlayStation. But when I talk about the importance of doing the research, what I didn't know, and I really don't know that I could have found it in the research I was doing at the time, but they had been tasked, the agency had been tasked with finding events where there was a minimum of 300,000 people. And that was not going to particularly be our event. Our event was getting close to 50,000 people a year, but obviously falling way short of 300,000. And so it just didn't align. But when the client came to the mobile marketing agency and then said, hey, we want to start finding some smaller events, because I had been doing the outreach, RibFest Chicago was at the top of their list. And so then we were able to have PlayStation come and visit our event 2 years in a row. And it was a really fun partnership. And so I think, you know, utilizing the mobile marketing companies and leaning on some of those agencies is another option if you have a large scale event where these companies are tasked with having traveling shows for usually a season. You know, most of the time they run in the summer and through Chicago anyway. In the warmer months, they hit some of the other warmer states. So sometimes you can, depending on where you're located, you can tap into them, but they can be a good resource. And I think the hard part is trying to find a contact in some of the agencies and maintaining that contact. sometimes they can have a lot of turnover, and sometimes because they rep a lot of brands, you have to actually reach a lot of contacts within that company to get to each one of those brands. I know Oscar Mayer is another kids brand that when we were working on a kids project, we really thought the Wienermobile would be a great fit to come out and visit that particular project. And we had to work through an agency. We did the same thing for an event where we were doing a huge back to school project, and we wanted to reach McDonald's and have Ronald McDonald make a visit, and we were able to connect with their mobile marketing agency where Ronald McDonald was able to come and bring backpacks for children who couldn't afford backpacks and school supplies, and it was a really great initiative. So sometimes those local agencies can help you also penetrate into some of the larger companies. When we talk about sponsorship leads, I've dove into a few different areas of best practices also for today's seminar. And what we want to talk about is who do you contact? You know, it was really interesting. I think that there's two things when you think about making your pitches, and I think really knowing who you're pitching to and what's in it for them. We talked a little bit about that at the last session and a little bit in the roundtable as a follow-up, but I think it's worth, based on the conversations, drilling down a little bit more on the fact that you really want to know what's in it for the sponsor, right? You as the, part of your development team, part of your nonprofit, your goal is to secure dollars. And your goal is to be able to bring in dollars to help the organization continue to thrive and grow. But you've got to put yourself in the perspective of the sponsor and what's in it for them if they participate. So I think looking at that is really important. I will go back again to sometimes our street festivals. When I was trying to support a particular community, I had to present it one way for the local businesses, and I had to present it another way for the larger companies. It was a hard lesson, and it took me a couple of years, but once I figured it out, it really did help me to start to be able to grow the sponsorship dollars we were able to secure. And so when I think about this, right, the large company, let's think about Honda. Honda may not want to sponsor a small community within Chicago, but when we talk about RibFest Chicago as a large-scale Chicago event, all of a sudden that starts to make it bigger for them, and so they're able to get more interested and get more dollars on board because now they're reaching the entire Chicagoland region. But when I would go to those neighborhood businesses, they really wanted to know that they were reinvesting in their local community. And so sometimes I had to be cautious about making the festival seem too big for those local business owners who wanted to give back to the neighborhood that they were part of. And so being aware of those types of balances, I think, is really important for your projects as well. And to that point, who you contact may depend on what level your company is at and who you're soliciting. If you're looking at local businesses, you're often going to go straight for the owner, the CEO, the chief marketing or officer, and that kind of a contact in your neighborhood. For the larger institutions, you're often going to be looking at the marketing department. Some national brands have community outreach, and that can also be a structured program that allows you to submit requests. Some of those larger companies also need a longer lead time when you're doing your sponsorship outreach. So I think it's important that you think about what that might look like. Community outreach grants and initiatives that you apply for, when I think about maybe an insurance company or some of those food companies often have these types of programs, and they often require a minimum of a 60-day lead time. So you really want to be able to try to get out in front of your project and be able to submit those applications and those requests early. Ideally, I think you should always be trying to work on sponsorship at least 6 months out. Although what I have also found is that a lot of companies will have some discretionary funds where they can spend up to $2,500 without too much red tape and approval. So for some of the smaller asks, they may be able to turn that around a little bit faster. I also have found that large companies require the lead times because they have more bureaucracy and a longer approval process. Your local business owners and some of the businesses that maybe you're seeing on a regular networking basis, they may be able to just write the check themselves. And so oftentimes small business owners are only thinking, 30 days in advance because they've got so much on their radar that they're constantly juggling and trying to work through. And so really kind of asking as you're doing your outreach, it's important in the relationship building to start asking people, what does their cycle look like? So you can, again, make notes in your spreadsheet and then start to improve your process over time. Depending on what your organization is representing, supplier diversity contacts may also be a good option for you. We do work with the National Association of Women Business Owners here in Chicago, and so we have a lot of sponsors who want to invest in women business owners and work on their supplier diversity initiatives, and that's a really great partnership. So that, you want to always be thinking about if there is a particular division of a company that might also tie into what you do. And then obviously, if you are fortunate enough to use some of the lead ideas that we've been sharing today, and you think about the introductions that are able to be made on your behalf into an organization, they can help you then get inside of a company and then ask that person who the right person is inside of that larger company. I know I've used that initiative like when trying to get into something like Motorola, very large company, really thought that at the time the technology was a great partner for one of our projects. And so we were able to get an introduction into the company and then try to use that to find the right person in the company to get the next layer of introduction. When you're making pitches and outreach to people, I think it's so incredibly important to do your research. I know that I will continue to talk about it. I've talked about it last time, and I have already said it a couple of times today. But again, you don't want to be wasting a potential partner's time. These people get a lot of proposals, especially if you're reaching out cold. They just get a lot of proposals. A lot of organizations are looking for money. A lot of people think that an organization is the right fit. So you really want to be doing your research to be sure that they support the types of things that you're pitching them on. And if you have a good idea, the other thing too, I think, is to often be creative. Sometimes for the larger partnerships, you may think that a company is just the very, very best fit. And if you can go to somebody like a Sony PlayStation and talk to them about what you want to do with them and what you think it could look like for them to participate in your project, and you have a big vision, helping to share that vision can help them also see yourself in your project. And that is a good example where that one really did help us along the way. Again, I think that if you are a music organization and you were to go to one of those food companies like an Aramark or a Cisco, it may not be the right fit, as much as you know that they are like investing in, maybe urban ag and things of that nature. So again, thinking about that and doing the research, most of those large companies, with the importance of corporate social responsibility these days, they've really started to put what they support on their website. So I think that doing your research and finding that information, it's definitely there, and could be in their annual reports for some of those large companies. So double checking if it's a good fit is always at the top of that list. Plan carefully. I think also sharing all of your options for the course of a year is important. Sometimes this may be a little bit more, again, you've got to think about who your audience is. I think that if you're going to local businesses, you don't want to go back multiple times in the course of the year. You want to be able to try to let them know all of their options for the year ahead so that they can plan accordingly rather than give something, maybe in March, only to find out that maybe there was an event in June they also wanted to be part of and they did not plan accordingly. On the flip side, going for the large companies, you may not want to give them every detailed option of what they could sponsor for your organization. You generally want to be sharing their biggest opportunities with them, and having a conversation about what that pitch could look like. The larger companies do often require more customized proposals and not necessarily just an overarching straight plan. So planning accordingly is really important there. And again, I think a lot of you are probably used to doing sales, and some of you may be afraid of it. I know that it can be tricky and it can be a little bit intimidating, but the more that you realize you're trying to develop relationships with these folks, and the more that you can, again, from last time, remember to ask them what their goals are, what they're trying to accomplish, and be able to talk to them about what their sales cycle looks like. Do they ever support local initiatives? How do they make their decisions? All of these questions start to give you insight. And if you can get the questions that you really want to know organized, they really start to be good, give you good insight into these companies so that you can be more successful over time. Getting that feedback, I think, is just invaluable to growing yourself as a sponsorship professional. When a sponsor declines, again, ask why. It's part of that same resource gathering that can help you elevate your sponsorship pitches. Maybe it's budget limitations. Maybe right now they're on a spending freeze, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't not ask them again in the future. That just means they can't do it right now. Is it a timing issue? Perhaps all of their funds are already expended for the current fiscal year. Knowing if they're on a fiscal year or a calendar year end can also be important, because they will have more money at the beginning of their whatever their year is. They will have more money at the beginning, and the more you get towards the end of their year, the more that the budget probably will already be gone by the time you get there. So planning around that can also help increase your chances of success. It can be a different cycle for every single prospect, and so really asking what their cycle is important. Some large corporations are budgeting 6 months in advance. Some are, again, smaller businesses, sometimes maybe 30 days in front of an event. So being able to look at that is important. And then sometimes it's just not the right fit. And if you can ask what the right fit looks like to a company, then sometimes you may be able to tailor your pitch in the future so that it more aligns with what they're looking for if they don't quite see what you see as possibility. Or sometimes that it's just not a place where you should continue spending your time because it's not the right fit for this particular company. And that allows you to also move on and keep finding more potential prospects that might align better. I think that oftentimes when I started in sponsorship, I did not realize the value of the execution. And so, I always look at it as matchmaking, that not only am I working for my nonprofit, but I'm also then working for the sponsor, and I become kind of this matchmaker that brings them together. And communicating effectively with a sponsor is one of the most important things that you can do for success. I remember one of the sponsors that I talked to, I was dumbfounded because I remember them saying, "Thank you for calling me back so quickly. I really appreciate it." And I could not understand. I had to even actually ask them. I was like, I'm sorry, but I don't understand. Don't most people return your calls? Here was a sponsor wanting to give us money. Obviously, I wanted to be responsive and not miss the opportunity. And they said, no, you'd be surprised that sometimes we have to wait a week or more before we get return phone calls. So really making sure that you put your sponsors at the top of that communication list is important. Many of you at your nonprofits may have small teams, and sometimes your tasks are many, and so it can often stretch you very thin. I know when I was part of a smaller team, it was challenging to communicate with my sponsors as much as I wanted. I wanted to give them that high touch, high end communication and really be able to always take their calls and keep them informed about what was happening. But as we got closer and closer to the actual event and there was so much going on, it became more challenging. So I think trying to plan ahead of time to make sure you have somebody who's the point person for your sponsors during execution is really important, to make sure they have the very best experience that they can and that they know who their go-to person is, so that they feel taken care of and always looked out for. One of the best ways to get a sponsor to come back is to make sure you execute on the deliverables that you've agreed to with that sponsor. I think I've seen too many organizations that once they secure the sponsor, they don't go back and look at the package or look at the agreement or pay attention to what the sponsor is entitled to make sure the sponsor got every single item on that checklist. But I think it's important because your sponsors, that's how they're evaluating their success. And so being able to have those conversations and revisit that periodically is of the utmost importance, because the fastest way to lose a sponsor is to get to the end of a project and have them go, well, we thought we were getting X, Y, Z, and we only got X and Y. And so we are not going to be interested in returning next year. So you want to always be revisiting those deliverables and make sure you and your team are delivering on them appropriately. Provide a program summary and evaluation at the end of your project. This can be time consuming. I know that oftentimes at the end of a big project or fundraiser, development teams are tired, staff's tired, you guys have worked really, really hard. But the importance of following up with a sponsor and showing them the program summary is really important. Helping them identify how many lives did they touch, what kind of a difference and an impact did their organization and their support make, and giving pictures in the customized follow-up evaluation when possible is another great way to make sure that even if there's staff changes within an organization, that they see how their branding landed on the event, that they see the impact that got made, and they can see the story and pictures of what they were part of. So I think being able to provide that summary evaluation at the end of a project is really important. And oftentimes I like with the largest partners to also have a follow-up meeting, much the same way that you might with your largest development donor over the course of a year. You want to check in with them and talk about how things went and just do a quick thank you and a follow-up call. Super important to always be expressing gratitude. I think that, again, sometimes we mean to, and most nonprofits know the value of thank you, so I don't want to, overemphasize this to this particular group, because I think most of you are already aware of the value of gratitude, but your sponsors are no different. Making sure that they know how much you appreciate what their support has done for you, very important in the long run. And oftentimes in providing those summaries and evaluations, they help you also start your renewal conversations, maybe before you even have your packages secured for the next year. And I think being able to kind of start to make your sponsor pitches a year-round process, that then alleviates the stress and the strain as you get further down the road and closer to your project. So also be ready to turn those forms around for the next year as fast if you have the opportunity, because you always want to get somebody's signature and confirmation whenever you can for renewed participation, especially in case there's staff changes and what have you. Best practices for following up with your sponsors. I consider this, I think it's important, and we talked about it a little bit in last month's roundtable, but there's usually two theories on what I consider sales and sponsorship. There are those people who consider themselves hunters, and they're always looking for the largest financial sponsor that they can find at the current moment. It's hunting big game. They want the elephant that they can find, and they want to be able to get that large donor this year. I've always been more of the farmer mentality. I'm a relationship development specialist, and when I do that, I don't feel like a salesperson. I really feel like I'm working to be able to find how to build relationships that will last for my partners and my nonprofits for the long term. And when you plant those seeds today, then they continue to grow year over year, and you can try to build the investment of a company with your organization. So for me, it's all about relationship development. That's always felt very natural to me, and it's always been more sincere and more authentic with who I am as a person. So I think knowing your personal style is important. But the other thing to think about, right, is that you can't just go to a large company one time with a pitch letter and ask them to support you and necessarily think that you're going to kind of have massive success. It really may be a lot of touches are required to get them to start to know you, be aware of you. And even then, right, Sony PlayStation, I didn't know they were aware of me because I couldn't get a response, but I didn't stop at least just sending the package, even if I couldn't get through to them because I was that sure it was a good fit. So taking the time to think about how many touches you're going to have with a partner over the course of a year could be really important. Don't always just show up with your hand out asking for a sponsor contribution, but be able to focus on building that relationship. So sometimes holiday messages are a really nice way to just be able to check in with a sponsor and wish them well during the course of a year. Sometimes having them on your mail list if they're open to that so that they can see your stories throughout the course of the year and the good work that your organization is doing. It's another really good way to just stay connected to them. Again, having those two-way conversations and trying to get a one-on-one meeting, even if you can only get them for 15 minutes or 30 minutes, and being able to have that goal-setting conversation about what is it that you are tasked with accomplishing this year for projects that you're supporting. And so that will help you in crafting your pitch and trying to be more successful. And trying to check in with those sponsors with your follow-up reports and those notes of gratitude throughout the course of the year. Again, they're all touch points that allow you to keep checking back in on a regular basis to try to deepen that relationship. Again, making sure you understand their goals and showing gratitude, equally important. Some other general best practices that I would share with you today is making sure that you are keeping this detailed database of contacts. I know that everybody, thinks often that they're going to be with their organization for a very long time, your nonprofit that you serve, and sometimes that works and sometimes that doesn't work. We've seen an awful lot of clients, that keep their information in a variety of ways, and so whatever CRM you're using, at the very least, have a master database that you are using, even if it is just an Excel spreadsheet, where you can keep all this information. Every single bit of it helps you be able to show value of who you're reaching out to and how you're making progress to anybody that you're working with on your leadership team. It allows you to report back to, the people who helped you find the potential prospects. You want to keep your board informed of relationships and recommendations they've made for you. If they feel like they're contributing and they feel like good work is coming out of that, they will be likely to continue making additional introductions for you. So being able to report back and share that content information can be important. And then again, any of that additional, the cycle information or knowing that there's a grant opportunity or whatever it might look like, having a place where all of that information is being recorded so that you can keep all of the details about every contact fresh in your mind is so incredibly important. Have a plan to make sure you're updating your contact list on a regular basis. If you have some downtime in the course of your year, make sure you're reaching out to also just follow up and confirm if your contact is still there. Sometimes being able to do e-blasts and mailings. They help you know if there's been staff changes at organizations and things of that nature. So you can, again, reach out and introduce yourself. We had a great relationship with it was a nonprofit to nonprofit sponsor, actually. And it was the Illinois pork producers, and we had a long-standing relationship, and we were so excited to have a strong partnership. But when staffing changes happened, we hadn't done a very good job of actually staying connected with anybody else in that organization. And a new director meant that they had new initiatives, and we lost a sponsor for no real good reason other than they had internal staff changes. So trying to update your list and meet additional people within an organization and stay connected throughout the course of the year, very important, so that you can also meet any new people and help them get to know you and the good work you've been doing before it's too late. And then always make sure that other people in your organization knows where your sponsorship list is kept. We've had too many cases whereby an organization will have invested an awful lot of time in this work. It is so incredibly important. We've had projects where we've stepped in when development directors have maybe gone on unexpected medical leaves, or maybe there was an unexpected change and then the board didn't necessarily know where any of the sponsorship information was kept. And so all of the good work that may have been done by anybody that had previously worked for those organizations vanished into thin air. And that can be really difficult. Even if you can go back through the promotional materials, maybe from a past gala or a past conference, you can look at the different logos and you can find the companies, but you still don't have the contacts in those organizations. And so it can be a wild goose chase and take you a lot longer to try to get into any of those clients that have previously supported you. And so I think it's really important that you are making sure you know, somebody in your organization knows where that list is, so that, you know, God forbid, if you get hit by a bus tomorrow or whatever the case might be, that the whole organization doesn't lose years of research and work that's been done to help them continue to grow and serve the clientele who most needs your services. At this time, I would love to open up the discussion for any questions that anybody may have. So please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A so that we can continue to be a little bit more personalized with anything we haven't covered today or anything you'd like more information on. I continue to think that sponsorship is the type of work that is so incredibly, you know, it's a constant learning process and it's a constant improvement process. And I'm surprised that a lot of organizations have not previously utilized more of it. But I think being able to continue to grow and share is just one of the ways that we continue to get better at tapping into this as an additional revenue stream. And I think, you know, running nonprofits is just like running a business. So the more diversified your revenue streams can be, the more successful you can be in your organization. And looking at the poll that we took this morning, we definitely have some very seasoned professionals on this call, but we seem to have the majority of folks on the call have secured up to almost, you know, between $20,000 and $50,000 in sponsorship prior to COVID. So some of you are definitely tapping into this, which is a great thing to hear. And I hope that you've learned some things today that will continue to take you into the next level of sponsorship. And we have a few people as well who may be just getting started, and then some who, again, very seasoned professionals. So thank you for sharing that. It's great to see those results today. All right, so one of the questions that we have is that what do you feel is a good frequency for checking in with current sponsors? So I think that this is definitely something that, you know, it's customized. It really does depend on the size of a busy professional or the locality of a busy professional. And oftentimes again, it can be a question you ask as part of your discovery and your conversation building and just asking the sponsor directly, what would you prefer, for our communication frequency? How often would you like me to check back with you? But I definitely try to put in some quarterly touches. I think that ideally again, you want 8 to 12 touches, in my opinion, before you often can get somebody these days to confirm a sponsorship or support. And so being able to, again, share your newsletter is a nice soft way to keep them informed without having to infringe upon them. But every now and then, if I see an article or if I see something, if I think that there's something based on the relationship that I've started to develop with them that I want to share with them, a nice email out is a really good way to do it. I do like holiday cards to sponsors because it's a soft way to wish them, happy holidays and just, again, pop up on their radar. And really, again, making sure when they start considering what they're going to support in the future. I always try to make sure I'm checking in with a sponsor 30 to 60 days before they're looking at decisions, to make sure that I'm on their radar and they haven't forgotten about me. I don't want to come in after they've made all their decisions for the year and miss that opportunity. So it's going to depend on who your sponsors are and what those relationships look like. But the more you can stay on top of mind on a regular basis, the better off you're going to be. But you don't want to be overbearing and burdensome to somebody who may be in a large corporation, and this is just one small piece of what they do in the course of a year. I hope that helped, Dave. We are a membership-based organization. Do you think it is bad or good to seek big sponsorships from non-members? And so I think that this is a really interesting question. I've worked with an awful lot of membership-based organizations, and often when they have their largest annual fundraiser, it's the best time to try to go to non-members and larger companies to support local businesses or local members. NAWBO Chicago is a member-based organization, and so we are bringing together women business owners and trying to support them. Been very challenging this particular year, as a lot of them are struggling. And so we're working with larger companies that may have programs and resources to support those women business owners who are our members. And so then we think about who could best support those members and what would that look like, because sometimes those companies, they don't qualify for membership, but sponsorship allows them to also get in front of that audience. It is another good opportunity too. I would use this opportunity to again mention if you are a membership-based organization, having some very clear parameters about when you also share your membership information or don't share your membership information is important. I know we recommend to our membership clients that they never sell membership lists, right? And that really any sponsor that comes in has to be coming from a very pure place of wanting to help those members and not just sell to those members and not just be trying to pitch our members. So really protect your membership-based list and think about what that looks like on the front end so that you've got some very good parameters. And I think that you'll be in good shape. But it's a great opportunity to bring in non-members to support your members when that makes sense. Jeff has added a note. Thank you for this presentation. Any additional thoughts on how an organization might transition from an events-based mode, for example, a gala or an initiative, to a year-round program-based model? Oh, that's a great question, Jeff. And I do think that it is unfortunate that an awful lot of large companies want to invest in one gala. But I think being able to, again, when you've been working on having those conversations and helping a sponsor see that they can get a year-round package of benefits and how the organization benefits and how the sponsor benefits, you can start to grow that relationship. Again, for NABO Chicago, we do an awful lot of sponsorship work. And I think that particular project is a great example where we have some clients who only come in for the annual conference. That's the signature event. They want to show up for that one and done, and they want to be able to have a big splash there, and that's what their mission is. So we have some of that, but we have actually converted an awful lot of the sponsors of that signature event into year-round donors by expanding their promotion, being able to showcase and highlight them, where we spotlight them a little differently throughout the course of the year. We give them an opportunity to be able to tie into, bigger initiatives. We're able to show them that they're having a bigger impact and a larger reach within the organization, and talking about the relationship development. And for a lot of the companies that support those women entrepreneurs, because they're looking to build relationships with those women, it has helped significantly that they are present year-round, because it's hard to form a relationship with an audience when you show up one time a year. So again, Jeff, I think having those conversations and really trying to, help the sponsor see why that could be more important, and how you maybe outline your packages if that's what you're going for. I know we talked a lot more about creating the sponsorship packages in session 1, but how you outline your packages can help incentivize those sponsors to be involved on a year-round basis. So if there are no other questions at this time, what I would also like to just share with everybody is that a reminder, at Big Buzz Idea Group, we are constantly trying to be able to share our knowledge garnered over 30-some years and bring it to you in a way that we can help you be more effective for your organizations. We've added a lot of resources this year, including the monthly breakfast clubs. So on the second Thursday in January, we're going to be focused, for those of you who are membership-based organizations, on membership. We've got an exciting panel planned, and we would invite you back to join us in January. And then next Thursday, we will also be having the roundtable. When we send out the follow-up from today's session, it will include information on next Thursday's roundtable. It maxes at 10 people. We had a great discussion last month on sponsorship, and I hope we'll have another one this month as well, where we can customize the conversation to you and dive a little deeper into anything you want to talk about and brainstorm with the group. It's a great peer-to-peer sharing format, and we're really excited to bring it. And then for those of you who maybe want some personalized consultation, I love being able to come to these sessions and share some of the broader knowledge. There's so much information I have learned on sponsorship, but I'm happy to also consult with you one-on-one and schedule those sessions in the event that would be helpful for you and your nonprofit. So we have started adding more personalized consultation calls where you can schedule one-on-one time, and we can customize our discussion specifically to what you need to grow your organization. So you will receive a follow-up with a survey and more information about these programs. I remain available to you, and want to wish you all the happiest of holidays, however you celebrate this year. Stay safe, stay well, and thank you for joining us this morning.